Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions on media production. If you've got questions, of course, you can pop them into Makana while you're there. You can also vote on the other questions and live chat with other producers. If you're not in Makana, just head on over to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and it's open 24/7, so you can get those questions into us whenever you like. But we've got some questions to hop into. Alexander, kick us off.
All right, our first question comes to us from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. I need a really powerful server replacement beelink with over 4 terabytes of SSD hard drive, the most memory possible, etc. What do you recommend? Want to stay with beelink or a similar format?
Go ahead, Paul.
This is kind of a softball that I'm pitching to Courtney that I've got this old in the tooth server. It's old, Windows 10, and I want to go to a small form factor. And now that I've got the Synology NAS, I don't need the disk space in it anymore. I just need the most powerful small form factor available. Courtney, do you have any ideas for me?
Courtney?
Yes. Well, you say you don't need the disk space, but you say you want 4 terabytes. So that seems to be incongruous. I'd look at this one, the beelink SER5 Mini. It's a Ryzen 7, so it's a pretty powerful PC. And you can get 8 threads there. It can go up to 4.3 gigahertz. And I don't know about how powerful you need. This one has the ability to put a 2.5-inch hard disk drive in there. That can be an SSD, 2.5-inch with the 4 terabyte, or it has an NVMe drive in there. It comes with 512 gigabyte NVMe. That's where your operating system is, and it comes with 16 gigs of RAM. But you do have access. You could upgrade that RAM. I'll have to check. I'm not sure if that Ryzen 7 supports more than 16 gigs. It might, but you could replace the RAM with 32. This particular price model for $289 comes with 16 gigs and the 500 gigabyte M2 SSD. And you can always add in that 2.5-inch drive, SSD drive. It'll fit inside that case as well. And it has gigabit Ethernet, so it might work well as a server there for you.
Next question.
Next question comes from Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. How can I use multiple $90 Zoom large meeting 1,000 licenses to scale up meetings? Are there any restrictions on doing this?
Alex.
This is actually a pretty common thing to do for large meetings. And a lot of times this has been done because there was a desire to have breakout rooms that would break into paired sharing or into groups of 5. And so Obvio is a company that does this relatively often, and they can do it for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. I think their largest event was 175,000 people. And oftentimes the increments are even smaller than that. It is, I think they incremented 500 because of the size of the rooms, and it might even be smaller than that. So they make hundreds of rooms sometimes. And this is done in AWS by auto spawning. There's a lot of scripts and process and automation, not things that I know how to do personally, but I know that that's what they're doing is they're spawning them all into AWS and then making the show available to all of those locations. And then my understanding of how this works is really that it is, you have to give the name, you have to customize the names of the users. So basically you're building a proxy so that the users are given a name and put into the thing through a website. That way you have control over where they are, and then you can move them around and so on and so forth. So, but that's how that's done to my knowledge. Again, I don't write the code myself, but we've had Obvio was actually the folks that run it, Grant and Blue, started here in Office Hours. They met here at least, so they've been doing this since almost the beginning of the pandemic.
Next question.
All right, this one is from me. How would you implement an automatic failover to a secondary ISP in your home network?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, this is, you need a router that's going to allow that to happen. So the router has to be able to bring in 2 WAN connections and then have some, the one that, Ubiquiti, of course, has that capability. The ones that we've used the most recently or the most often in the last 10 years have been Meraki systems, where even the small, like MX60s and above, we'll take 2 WAN connections, and then you can build the process by which it will fall over. It's usually not seamless. And the reason it's not seamless is you don't want it going back and forth all the time. You don't want to switch back and forth, switch it back and forth. So usually you lose a second or two of connectivity. So if you're live streaming, it may not be, sometimes what we'd rather do. So when we're live streaming, a lot of times we don't want that to happen. What we want to do is have it, we have 2 encoders, and those encoders are going to an ingest, and we may do what we call output locking on those encoders if they're capable of that. And that means they're actually kind of like gen locking for encoders. So they're putting out the same frames at the same time. And so by output locking, it means that if one encoder goes down and loses connectivity, the player just switches over to the other one seamlessly. But that's how we handle it with live streaming. But when you do it, but a lot of times inside of all of that, we still have a primary backup connection. And again, if you lose your main connection, you usually have a couple seconds before it decides, oh, okay, there's really not anything else coming down the path, and I'm going to switch over to the other one.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I recently got a Ubiquiti router. Wonderful device. The user interface is incredible. And Mickey helped me set up a failover to a AT&T wireless thing. But you don't want to combine them. You want to have it on standby. It'll kick in. And it's a long answer. I'm giving you the very short answer. And Mickey can help you with this, I think. He's very helpful. And it's just great. The system I have now is awesome with the Ubiquiti.
Next question.
Next question comes from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What is the panel's thoughts on the Arc browser? And then he's got a YouTube video posted there.
Go ahead, Paul. Can't hear you, Paul.
Okay, so the Arc browser, I'm going to pass. I was thinking of another browser, so I'm going to pass. Somebody else pick this one up.
All right, Courtney, go ahead.
I took a look at the video. I have not used the Arc browser. It seems to be based on the Chromium engine, so it's the same engine that runs Chrome and that runs Microsoft Edge browser. The person reviewing it in the video seemed to think that it was a little bit overly complex in its user interface. So whether it's faster or not, it does incorporate some AI into it, which regular Chrome, which is what I use all the time, is incorporating more and more, especially on search results and so on. They put Bard in, and they pulled Bard out, and then went to Gemini, and then they pulled that out. So we'll see what they end up doing with the Chrome browser. But I've gotten so accustomed to using Chrome, and I'm heavily tied into the Chrome, to the Google Drive, Google Maps, Gmail, etc., that it'd be hard for me to switch to something else.
Alex?
Yeah, I just don't have enough time to learn something new in the area of browsers. They just don't matter enough to me. Like, I think that's the problem that I have, is that, like, the idea of learning a whole other set of browsers. I use Safari, I use Chrome, and I use Firefox when I need to test something across multiple platforms. And for me, the browser wars are kind of over. I mean, there's a lot of people that use Edge, but that's because it was installed with their operating system. We can talk about whether that should actually occur. But anyway, but I think that outside of that, I just think that those are the big four. I think that there's a lot of other ones that are exotic, but I'm not sure why someone would use them on a regular basis.
Alexander?
I haven't actually used it, and the main reason is, and I don't know if they fixed this, but the last time I read into Arc browser, they require you to log in and create an account to use it, so I just said nope.
Alex?
Yeah, and one of the reasons you don't want to necessarily use smaller browsers at this point is because they don't get tested. So a lot of times when people are building stuff, they open up a couple browsers, and usually it's Chrome, maybe Firefox and Edge, and Safari. Those are the big four. And again, they don't really test their browser, their websites, oftentimes their services on anything wider than those four. And in some cases, if it's Google, I don't know if they test it on anything other than Chrome. So I think that you just have to know that once you get out there, a lot of things may not work the way that they're supposed to, because it's too small of a market for them to expend energy on.
Next question.
All right, next question is a QR code from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Does Sound Devices have any future plans to improve the micro onboard touchscreen on the MixPre 3 and 6? Maybe less fun size and more adultful candy bar size style screen and buttons?
Alex?
There's a couple problems with it. Number one is you're giving up real estate. There's a lot of dials and things that you need there that you're giving up real estate. I mean, Courtney will be able to talk about it because he does a lot of sound mixing. So there's other things you want to do that are not the screen. The second thing is the larger the screen is, the more likely it'll be broken. So you're creating a larger surface area that can be hit. And so for both of those reasons, it tends to be you tend to make smaller screens for these types of things.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. It is small for a reason, because they're trying to keep the mixer itself baggable. It has to be put into a bag, and they go too big a screen, and it's going to take up too much space. And you don't want to accidentally, in a bag mixer, you don't want to accidentally hit a touch screen and switch you out of something or stop or do something else. So you want to have mechanical controls to roll, stop, and adjust levels, things like that. So also they would have to completely redesign their user interface, because the user interface now is designed for that small screen with very large buttons and with nested menus, and they would have to kind of start all over again. So I don't see them putting a lot of R&D into increasing the screen size very much. Maybe 10% or something would be about the best, and just increase the size of everything and use the same user interface.
Alexander?
I don't own a MixPre. I've messed around with them a little bit, but design is all about compromise. Like we've already said, they're about the form factor and size. Keeping it a certain size is important for a lot of field recorders, because they want to be able to put it in their bag. But also, if you put a bigger screen in there, it means it's going to draw more current from the battery. So battery is always a concern with that. I've heard reports that a lot of people don't seem to like at least people that I know tell me they don't like the battery life on the MixPre 3, but I'm sure other people on the panel have their own comments about that.
It's certainly battery hungry. And remember, there's a quarter 20 on the top and the bottom of this thing for a reason. It's designed to be small and designed to be a field mixer. Some of us might even put it on an iPhone rig. But the thing you got to remember is the USB port on the side of the MixPre actually allows you to hook up external control to it. So there's support for things like the Korg Nano controller. If you're looking for more live in the moment stuff, there's definitely the opportunity for you to go ahead and use it the way that we're using it, which is at a desk, because noise assist is great. It just might not be the way that they originally intended it. Next question.
Another QR code question from Gabriela Exceso Mestiera and Sault Ste. Marie. Yesterday, my question was heavily edited and the quote changed for something else. Original quote had never got why. My English may be no good, but I like the order of my words. How does this affect a content's relationship to its audience when this happens?
Go ahead, Chris.
Gabriela, I feel your frustration. I think the words and language are very delicate, and getting them wrong is horrible. The language barrier, or the language obstacle, trying to be sensitive, would be super frustrating. I can imagine it. I don't think anybody edited your question on purpose, but I totally get it, that getting it a little bit wrong can absolutely change it. I would love one day, we do ruthless reviews, Alex, like ruthless reviews, like Fenwick, your background's too sharp. Fenwick, your microphone is crooked. Fenwick, why are you wearing headphones? I would love to do a ruthless reviews of answers. Script it out, show the things that were good, things that were bad. I'd love to do that one.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that they were attempting to it was hard to read, and I think I was the benefactor of that. And it was, so a lot of times we make decisions. In the past, what we've done is we've actually just deleted, rejected questions that we can't read. So there's an attempt to clean them up so that they're readable. So while your order may make sense to you, they may not be readable for us. So I think that we did actually do some research on this, and I was told that they went back to find the original quote that they thought that you were referring to. And then they put in the original quote from the person, because you quoted someone. I don't remember the question, to be honest. But you quoted someone, and they went back and found that quote because it didn't feel like it was perfectly quoted. So I think that that's actually what happened in this case. But what we're trying to do is actually keep questions that we aren't fully formed. And, I think that we have to read them out during the show. So if we were just rejecting them, and now we're accepting them, but sometimes trying to make them so that they are readable in the show. So I think that's probably what you're going to have, and you're probably going to see it again. There we go.
Next question.
Paul Walhus is back from Austin, Texas. Can Logitech's new A50X Lightspeed gaming headset really be a quote-unquote broadcast quality microphone? It sells for $379.99 and comes in black or white, and then he's got a link to the product.
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't know whether to get black or white, but I've been hanging out at the boring bodega too much where the gamers hang out, and I've got the bug, the gaming bug. I never had it before. This thing has PlaySync switching. You can run an Xbox, a PS5, or a PC all at once. You can. It has audio drivers, Pro G graphene drivers. It has pro-grade Lightspeed wireless, plus Bluetooth dual device mixing. And if that isn't enough, it has 3 HDMI ports: HDMI 2.1, 4K, 120 hertz. I could go on, but this. I know, Chris, you're going to make fun of me. I know. I just feel it coming. But this is a sensational headset here.
Go ahead, Bill.
Of all the fuzzy standards, I believe, and I'm putting it in air quotes because the broadcast quality microphone here is in what my editor used to call scare quotes, actually. There is no such thing defined as broadcast quality. There are certainly certain audio standards, like this covers 20 to 20,000 hertz. Those kind of things are technical specs. But when it comes to the words broadcast quality, the definition of that is pretty much whatever the marketing people in the company say it's going to be, because there is no standard. I would hope this sounds fine. I would hope it has everything from the lowest end of human voice all the way up to maybe even some of the overtones that make voices sound rich and clear. But you're never going to know if it just broadcast quality. A microphone could be pretty marginal and still be called broadcast quality because it's in those scare quotes.
Courtney?
Yeah, broadcast quality? Nah. I mean, if it goes over wireless, I would not use it in a broadcast booth. Plus, since it can be switched between 3 different systems at a touch on the wireless headset, I would not do that either. And looking at the specs, here's a couple of things that scared me. I think it was only 16-bit sampling rate at 48K. So on the microphone is 60 to 20,000. So it's an omnidirectional microphone, not a unidirectional microphone or noise canceling microphone. So I think this is aimed at gamers, obviously, where, you need good clarity for cutting through all the game noise, but not necessarily broadcast quality that you'd use on like announcers for a football game or a basketball game.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Courtney. I mean, it's a crazy setup. It's got 2 HDMI inputs and an HDMI output, and then the headset still looks. I mean, maybe it might sound a little bit better than other gaming headsets, but they really sound bad. Most gaming headsets are just a trash. And if I was going to spend $379, I'd buy a real broadcast headset as opposed to a gaming broadcast headset. So I think that this is more marketing and more aimed at gamers who don't know better, as opposed to I can spend $379 and buy a Sennheiser actual broadcast headset, and actually have it work. It's just kind of like, oh, the poor kids don't know the difference, so there's real headsets at $379. That's all I'm saying.
Chris?
If it says broadcast quality, it's not. That's been our rule of thumb. If somebody has to call it broadcast quality, trust me, it's not. Period.
Alexander?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said here. I mean, brands like Shure, Sennheiser, Audio-Technica, AKG, etc. I trust them if they say that. But a company like Logitech saying something is pro grade when Logitech has never made anything that's professional as far as audio is concerned, no. I mean, it's cute. You're trying, Logitech. Good for you.
Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. BMD released a software update for the ATEM Constellation 8K. Do you think we'll see another software update to address the famous ATEM crush?
Alexander?
No. I haven't used the 8K specifically, but I mean, we've talked about this at length quite a few times with the ATEM minis specifically, and I know that the USB UVC output on those only does compressed MJPEG. So you can't change something that fundamentally was not designed to do uncompressed YUI2 video. So I think at this point, until we see new hardware where we can verify, confirm that they have upgraded the encoder chips in there, I don't think there's anything that can be done.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't think that this is fixable in software. I agree with Alex. So I think that this is. I will say that they did this new update probably addressed many of the things. So the big update for the ATEM Constellation 8K is we now have audio mapping. We had color space and HDR override selection, something that some of us have been asking for almost since the day that the Constellation shipped. Adds options for borderless multi-view. Yay! So the reason, by the way, our show has been using the MV16 for the multi-view was because the Constellation doesn't do what it just fixed. Allows custom multi-view border colors. Yay! Allows multi-view labels to be enabled and disabled individually. So all of these things are things that we desperately wanted to be added to the ATEM for many things that we were doing. So it's a great update. It's probably not going to update the black levels.
Next question.
Next question comes from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. We are experimenting with DALL-E 3 in my high school videography class. Any advice I can give to my students as we start exploring this tool?
Alex?
Lots of experimentation. I mean, that's the first thing is just look at it. Now, the other thing you want to do is put, the number one thing to do is do lots of it. And there's no way to avoid understanding how the machine works or how the brain thinks about these things, or the CG brain or the ChatGPT brain thinks about these things other than just doing it. Now, what you can do is there's a lot of guides on prompts and so on and so forth. One of the things you want to think about is very simple things. What it doesn't do is you can't say negatives. So put this in, but not that. It doesn't know what to do with that. You generally don't want to talk about the past or being something. You want something doing something that it understands what that is. Things in steady state don't tend to be things described in steady state tend not to be descripted well or shown well. So those are some of the things to kind of think about as you kind of go through that process. But the cool thing about DALL-E as opposed to Midjourney is you can talk to it. So you can put something in, and if you don't like it, say, well, make that a little bit redder, or make the head a little bit bigger, or make the eyes bigger, or make this smaller. And you don't have to re-prompt it. You can simply just kind of chat with it to get the result that you're looking for.
Paul?
Yeah, it's one thing to keep in mind. It's under limited access right now, but it's available through like ChatGPT. It generates much sharper, detailed images, and it understands much more complex prompts. It's versatile. You can make images in various styles, and it can handle landscape and portrait orientations. It's all around better than the previous iteration.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. And a way to access it, too, is through the Edge browser. If you have an Edge browser installed either in your Mac or your PC, it's a good way to access DALL-E for free. You just click on the little Copilot, and Copilot uses DALL-E 3. And this is the Microsoft implementation. It does allow you to bring in pictures, bring in audio. So it uses text and or pictures or video or audio to respond to. And it creates image, and it does have a lot of good guardrails on it. And it has 3 choices to be more creative, more balanced, or more precise. So you can set how much hallucination there is on the text on the LLMs if you're looking for text modular summarization. But if you're just looking for pictures, it supports those too, and it supports the things that the version 3 that the other people were talking about. But it does have guardrails. You may be a little bit upset if you can't draw a picture of some famous politician or something, because it kind of limits those things. But in a school environment, that's a good thing, probably.
I think the most exciting thing about this is that you're doing the right thing and saying, let me show you this new tool and teach you how to use it. A lot of educators are scared of AI, and it's posing some unique challenges for them. But until you start to play with these tools and see how they work and understand what inputs do I need to use to get the outputs on the other side, it's really going to take the people that the young people who have more time and have all this creative freedom to really experiment and make some things that we're not even expecting. I think beyond that, you're not just saying no, bad, so I'm going to scare you away. The bigger thing, though, is that I am anxious to see when will the Midjourneys of the world and the ChatGPTs roll out something specifically for education and say, let me give you a different tier that's not as high value, that it's not as high of a friction on the way in that's going to make people hesitant. That's how you're going to, seed the next generation of people who are going to use that tool. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Fred Parr in Kent, Washington. Just saw this from Sony this morning. Looks like mocap at home. Thoughts? And then he's got a link there.
Go ahead, Bill.
I love this. It looks really, really cool. I mean, it's a silly little thing. It's $449, but they're basically AirTag kind of things that you can stick on your body. And so I think this is going to generate a whole new world of Dance Revolution and just fun for kids to do something. Obviously, this is not at the level of professional mocap with all the balls on the suits that you're really doing for trying to take somebody in there. But, if you've got an extra $450 and you want to have some fun with it, this seems like it would be a great weekend for a set of kids that love dancing and things like that. They'd probably have a ball with it. I think it's kind of cool.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't know if you could do that only because I don't think there's any apps out there for it. It's really a development process, so they're providing this to developers to make that work. I think that most recently why it's gotten a little bit of – I had never heard of it before this question, so thanks, Fred. But I scanned it over the last couple questions and kind of looked through it. It's interesting that it says, here's how to send it to Motion Builder. Here's how to send it to Unity. So it is really designed for developers to build games to do exactly what Bill does. I can't do that yet, but it would be something – and it's hardware – that what's interesting about it is it is approximating the human body and then exporting out a skeleton to be used. And they just released, looks like about a month and a half ago, a receiver in Unreal. So you could actually drive characters in Unreal from, or build a game that would drive it. Or, for instance, if you wanted to, you might be able to do things like try to learn some martial arts or try to learn some boxing or try to do some other things without some of the AR tools. This is a little bit of a Wii on steroids, where you have, you have a little bit more access. It looks like what they're doing is they're tracking, I believe, the head, the wrists, the ankles, and the hips, which would get you a lot using inverse kinematics. So I think that's there. I mean, this is 6 points. When we use a Vicon system, I think we're using 57 or 58 points. So there's a lot more that we usually track to get higher fidelity, as Bill said. But I think that I think that this is a pretty good. I mean, I can see how you could build interactive games with it. You could interact with it, and I think that this is a great solution for doing some basic previs for independent filmmakers. That's what I did. I did a lot of previs, and we did motion capture 25 years ago for Star Wars. But our system cost $2 million, not $449. And so now, if you wanted to hash out something, it's never been cheaper to kind of hack out an idea of the character's going to walk over here and then they're going to walk over there. Does it need to be perfect? No, but for storyboarding, it could be really useful for someone who's a non-animator. But I think that the primary focus that Sony has is not really helping animators; it's really helping people build more body-based games, as opposed to so you can duck under things and interact with things. Those types of things, I think, is what they're really trying to focus on there.
Paul?
Yeah, as a 80-year-old former fitness instructor, I see myself turning myself into an 18-year-old fitness instructor with the wrist, the head, the ankle, the hip, and transforming into using another avatar. This is fantastic.
Courtney?
Yeah, Paul's catfishing put aside, it does look like it has an app that runs on your phone. You calibrate it with the app, and you you capture your motion with the app. It doesn't have an avatar you can apply on the phone app, so that you could do just little dance things for TikTok or whatever, if TikTok is still around. But it also records that mocap data, and then you can transfer that to your PC to incorporate it into the Unreal Engine or the other applications that Alex was talking about, so that you could use that mocap data in something a little heavier besides TikTok.
Alexander?
My question is, and I'm curious what everybody else thinks, is this an attempt to make this technology more accessible and appealing to people that are they were sort of curious about it, budding videographers and filmmakers maybe that are just sort of in the early stages of their career. They don't have huge budgets. Is that kind of what Sony is going after? I'm very curious, because just even the design of the product too, and the whole aspect, just going through the whole web page and everything, it just seems like it's not necessarily geared for just tech people. They're trying to make it appealing to more people, mass market.
Alex?
They're making it appealing to game developers. That's what if you look at what they're going through, it goes out to Motion Builder, it goes out to Unity, it goes out to Unreal. That means that what they want to do is give these tools. There's kind of a chicken or egg thing. You can't build the tools until you have the hardware to do it. So now what they've said is, hey, there is a not too expensive way for you to develop something that people can interact with. And so I'm sure that Sony knows it'll take 2 or 3 years for this to come out. But imagine being able to, for instance, you can, if you're playing Call of Duty or something else, being able to hold your hands up like this, or even hold onto some kind of game thing or whatever that you're going to pull, but it has a lot more information about your body and your body position and what it's doing. It could make those games much more interactive and much more athletic. So this might change a lot of the typical gamer. This could get really hard. It could give. A lot of us have talked about this for the last decade, is that there's some point where we start tracking the whole body for games, and inside of that, there's a huge advantage. You'll start to see gamers having to get into pretty good shape to actually be able to compete at a high level, because they're going to have to be moving around a lot, because as we track more, their ability to respond will be much faster. Right now, you're slowed down by what you're doing with the controller. You'll speed it up if you start actually having whole body tracking of your ability to access that. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects it. But I think that they're really targeting this towards game developers and app developers. Again, this could be, as Paul alluded to, you could do yoga, you could do other things where it's showing you with the CG character. Not so, that could have been captured that way as well. But you could be comparing your own body to a martial artist or a yoga teacher. A lot of us have talked about that for at least 2 decades. There's going to be some point where we start being able to train and learn, using these devices.
Bill?
I think all of that is perfectly reasonable. I will say that I'm a little surprised that, they did it in candy colors, and their marketing at this point, at least on the website, kind of shows a more young person gamification kind of this, rather than, coming in stainless steel and other things, kind of more like the AirTags that try to look a little more professional. It looks, and this may just be the way to get it out there.
if you're trying to get game developers to use it, you have to sell the idea that kids would want to wear them. So I think that kid thing is not really aimed at the kids. It's trying to create some imagination with the developers to think that, oh, kids might actually put these on.
I think they need to OEM this in more muted colors, and then when a golfer is going out and trying to fix their swing, and they're going to spend $400 on a launch monitor that's like has a sonar that's tracking the spin of the ball. If you could actually have telemetry data on yourself, I mean, there's been people trying to do this just with video for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You can,
maybe step one in a whole new area.
They'll make more money.
Athletic kinematics, big market probably.
Golf's a big market. Anyway, next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas, and here on the panel asks, Reddit exploded onto the markets yesterday, going up to 60%. Why the frenzy over Reddit?
Paul?
Yeah, I think I know why, because when I do searches, a lot of times I end up at Reddit because nobody else has the answer, and somebody on Reddit has got the answer. And they just cut some deal. I forget what the deal was with the big player, but they've never made a profit. But I think they've got a future.
There was a $60 million licensing deal with Google to get their API on the back end to train Gemini. But go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, there's 3 little letters is a good reason. They're raising funds. It was an IPO. So initial public offering, the stock just became available for us plebeians to purchase out there. So it got a big bump as it went on the market with its IPO. And I think they raised $750 million, I think, in the one day. But with their IPO, and like was said, they're licensing their data to several LLMs, Google being the main one, I think, because it is a great source of pretty accurate information. It's fairly well vetted by the other Reddit users who put in their 2 cents. And anytime somebody has a problem for troubleshooting, it's a great source for accurate information. That's why they're licensing that whole database to all LLMs for their AI.
Next question.
Next question comes from Talalik Lopez Waterman in Wilmington, Delaware. Let's talk protection plans. Do you purchase equipment protection plans? Over the years, I've grown to see them as having one reason to bolster vendor profits. Am I wrong?
Alexander?
Yeah, historically, I've never really liked them, and as someone who's worked in commission sales environments and knows the ins and outs and where it goes wrong, I've never generally really liked them. The current company that I work for sells them, although I'm not on a commission sales basis, but we actually have a really good service plan that differentiates. But because the problem that I find with these is that you pay the extra money, and if something does go wrong with the hardware and you have to get an RMA, oftentimes I still have to end up paying shipping. And I have to be the one that has to facilitate the repair and follow up with the company and see when am I getting parts replaced and that sort of stuff. And when you have a company that has a good comprehensive warranty where they actually I want them to deal with it. You pay the shipping, you follow up with the repair facility, you deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it. If they can do that, and if I think it's worth it to me, if they can give me a loaner while I'm waiting for repair, that's pretty good. So I guess it really depends. You got to really dig down into the fine print and see what exactly you're getting there.
Alex?
I use it with Apple and no one else, typically. I mean, because the Apple, and the reason is that I've had a couple other ones where I bought it, and then when something went wrong, someone nitpicked me about exactly, how was I using it or how would I know? And Apple has the geniuses have an enormous amount of, when I say geniuses, I mean that is a technical term. The folks at the store have I don't know if they're all geniuses. I mean, it's pretty hard. It's a very small percentage of the population. But they have a very large latitude in what they can do to fix and they generally will lean towards fixing it as opposed to lean towards protecting having to pay for it. So in general, I don't buy production plans except for Apple products, which I buy with every Apple product because it just takes everything away from worrying about that product with what it's covered. There's never any questions. You walk in, it happens quickly. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of other vendors don't do. it's kind of like getting insurance and having insurance nitpick whether you're allowed to have the insurance. You're like, well, if I didn't, if I wasn't going to get covered, then why was I paying for it? And that's the problem that other services have.
And a lot of the third-party third-party protection plans, even your travel insurance, when you go to fly on an airline, it's like, would you like to protect your trip? It's an insurance company that's behind it. It'll have Allianz or have some other. When it's an outside vendor, it starts to get messy. Paul?
Yeah, Apple Care is wonderful. I've had great experiences with both Apple stores in Austin with Apple Care. They've always come through. But why piecemeal protect all your individual equipment when you can get one insurance policy for everything? And the best one I've found is ARRL insurance. The amateur radio insurance covers everything. Not just my ham radio gear, but everything else. It's incredible. And so I would look for a general plan rather than a specific plan to each piece of gear, except for Apple Care.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think Apple Care is the exception to the rule because all their hardware is at a 40% markup originally, plus now you're at 50% after you give it them. So they can afford to do it. They can afford to exchange stuff and not come out at a loss. So they can afford to make the customer happy without going under. Most of these third-party insurance plans are warranty plans that they're sold at like Best Buy or the other appliance stores are really not worth it. If you read the fine print, they say they only cover after the manufacturer's warranty has been depleted. In other words, they default to the manufacturer's warranty first. So usually if it comes with, let's say a Samsung TV comes with a 1-year warranty or something, you've got to use the Samsung warranty first, and then it'll default to the additional warranty will cover anything additional that the manufacturer's warranty doesn't cover. And so a lot of times for that first year, you're really paying for nothing because the first year is probably covered by the manufacturer. So it's really not worth a lot of money, not worth the investment, what they can do.
Alex?
And the real problem with that is arguing with them about whether, who needs to pay for what and how does it, when you have two different companies that are trying not to pay for it, it just really is pain in the neck, and so that's why Apple's done really well at this and they've made a lot more money doing it. Because and this gets into Apple kind of oftentimes understands the big picture, and other companies tend to be driven by penny pinchers, and so and don't realize that that they're creating demand destruction by doing things that are small minded.
Then just to build on your comment on the latitude of the Genius Bar, I went in for before the Butterfly keyboard replacement program. I was about 2 years into a program or into Apple Care with my machine, or maybe it was 3. I came in because my command key stopped working. I guess I was beating on it too hard. But this machine had been through war. I mean, it was a Road Warrior computer. And he's like, well, everything's backed up, right? I said, oh, yeah, it's backed up. I'm solid. It's like, okay. He gave it back. He's like, yeah, we shorted out the logic board by accident when we were replacing the keyboard, so it's got a whole new set of internals. You're good to go. I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. Just a quick reminder, we do have a double dose of Q&A today, so we've got an awesome panel, and if you've got questions, it's a great opportunity to get them in. Of course, you can do that in Makana, where you can also vote the questions up and down, chat with the other producers, and askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. If you are not in Makana, you can do that 24/7, and we'll get them in here. We might even get to them today. Next question.
Next question comes from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Why in this day and age do so many schools and companies still demand Windows software and practices only?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think it comes down to tech support. I mean, these school districts and other companies want a consistent experience out in the field because they're going to be supporting all these products, and to have the tech support people have to understand multiple systems and all the variation in there just doesn't make sense. So I think whenever any company says you have to use this stuff, I always think, it's because their support system is built toward that and they don't want to have to broaden out to support multiple different kinds of things. That's my 2 cents.
Alex?
There's 2 things that I've seen in corporate for quite some time. Number one is the corporate IT staff has more control over your computer, so they tend to want to use that because you have less privacy and they have more control, and that allows them to administer whatever they want to administer and lock it down in ways that are more difficult on the Apple ecosystem. The other side of it is we saw this a long time ago, but IT staffs that support PCs tend to be much larger than IT staffs that support Mac. And if you're an IT person and you need an island and you want your island to be larger, you should use a PC. so the IT staffs tend to be larger and more important. In almost every team, if you look at some of the largest companies in the world, you look at their Mac support team versus their PC support team, and usually the Mac support team is about 1/5 the size of the PC support team. And oftentimes, I mean per user, so not total number, but I mean literally per user, there's 5 times as many IT staff. So if you're trying to build an island inside of a company as an IT administrator, you're better off on a PC side.
Paul?
I think cost may be a factor because you can get very low-cost PC gear as opposed, but, Apple has good programs too. They have low-cost gear. Over to Courtney.
Go ahead, Courtney.
There was a big backlash on this. A lot of school districts got upset because school districts were buying all their students iPads at $1,500 a pop. And a lot of people got upset that they were spending that much money on it. And this is where Google made their inroads with their Chrome PCs, which were not very good quality. And so then the thing moved the other direction, so the kids in schools were all working off of the Chrome because it had a good interface for teachers. They had developed a whole infrastructure for locking them down and allowing the students to work in that Google universe of Google Sheets, Google, all the Google Drive, all that stuff. They had the ability to administrate all those PCs and keep the kids from using other stuff. The reason they're using Windows now is in the higher level schools, beyond elementary school, is because most corporations, as was mentioned, will have Windows PCs as their major infrastructure in the corporation. You may find the marketing department has a few apples in there for all their creative and all their design people, but mostly the corporation runs on the Windows world, so that's why they want to get people in high school and college, used to operating in that area and doing tech support in that area.
Alexander?
Yeah, and other than the obvious, Microsoft is the incumbent. They've been fully entrenched in businesses, over the last 30 years. It's really about Microsoft has spent a lot of time and effort, money in developing really good tools to enhance the lives of IT people to manage computers. And that's really what it's about. Apple was never really into the server market. I mean, they tried to make even server hardware, and that wasn't super successful. So it's just really, it comes down to the tools, I think, and what they allow IT developers and IT support staff to be able to do with these computers. Other than obviously, yes, you can build a PC cheaper than a Mac.
Alex?
Yeah, when we say cheaper, we should also, when we account for time, usually that evens out pretty quickly. So cost of ownership is different than cost of purchase. And the other platforms tend to be very administration-based. And so you just have to decide, if you're administration buying them, then you buy things that are friendly to you as the user. I don't know if the Google thing at the end is going to be as successful as I think they might have thought by working with all the schools. I know from my kids are in school and they have Google Chromebooks, and I don't think that they would ever use. I think it actually affects why some students are not willing to buy Android phones at this point. Above the blue bubble is because they just hate their Chromebooks. I mean, they hate them in a way that is, like they'd throw them into the pool if I let them. So they just really hate them, and they hate the Google. It's just a really interesting puzzle is that I think that Google thought that they was going to make inroads with these people and they'd use it forever, but they just can't wait to get out of school and not use those Chromebooks anymore. And so it's going to be problematic for Google ongoingly.
Next question.
We got a QR code question here from Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. Is there an intermediate streaming solution between the original HDMI to USB Magewell stick to OBS to YouTube versus the LiveU Solo and its 1,000 subscriber requirement?
Alex?
I don't know what the 1,000 subscriber requirement is. Maybe YouTube has that now. I can't really remember. I have a lot of YouTube accounts that have a lot of streaming accounts. So I'm not sure what if you're talking about there's 1,000 subscriber limit, I think, on TikTok and some of the other ones, and that's mostly so that someone can't just spin up an account and start streaming inappropriate things. They have to have it slows them down. If they block your account, they want it to be hard for you to build that back up again. So that's usually where those requirements come from. As far as is there somewhere in between, there's so many things in between. You have software like Ecamm and Mimo Live and vMix. You have the Elemental Links. You have lots of other. There's many ways to stream. And so OBS is definitely, that's probably one of the least expensive ones. You can get the HDMI to USB Magewell is great. You can go down to you can get down to $20 for something that will input HDMI video as a signal. So there's a lot of options here.
Paul?
Yeah, I would say, like Alex said, NDI, and also vMix. You could, and if you want to go cloud-based, you could use like Restream or StreamYard or something like that.
Alexander?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Brian is specifically saying YouTube has some kind of 1,000 subscriber limit. That's not true for live streaming. In fact, but you do have to go through a series of steps that they want you to do to verify your identity. I actually had to record a video and submit it to YouTube to get approved, and it took about a day or so for them to approve and give me full access. So you do have to answer all these questions.
Next question.
Next question comes from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. At GDC, Unreal Engine released 5.4, a motion design editor. How could this compete with Apple Motion, After Effects, and other similar tools?
Alex?
It's not really competing with those. It's really competing with more of the broadcast graphics. So this is Avalanche. Avalanche is, I think, they're talking about a motion design editor, but Avalanche is really what's released. Nick Justison's going to come on. We're actually talking to some folks about bringing them on over the next couple months to talk about Avalanche. It's really exciting. And what it is a broadcast graphics tools that have been a lot of the quote-unquote AR tools that you see during football games and sports have been, using some version of Unreal, and in some cases, earlier versions of Avalanche. And so Avalanche is really exciting. And a lot of us thought that, hey, this would be a great tool for us to use for motion graphics by 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe even more. But all the tools weren't there to do it. Just the input tools and the processing tools and anti-aliasing tools and lots of other things there. And now they're adding all of those in, and it's going to be a really interesting market. What we're also trying to figure out, the other foot to drop, is how they're going to charge for that. Because up until now, it's all been pretty much free. And so they're already kind of hinting that there's going to be more expense to activation as they move forward.
Bill?
Yeah, I've never seen these tools as similar, really. I know they are designed to do motion graphics, and in that respect, in the universe, they're similar.
Again, Unreal is really about real-time graphics. This is not competing at. They're not. The question is asking about Apple Motion and After Effects and so on and so forth, but they're not. It's not competing with those at all. What it's really competing with is Chiron, VizRT, those types of things. It's a real-time graphics engine, not a post graphics engine.
I understand that. My point that I was trying to make was that within the vertical of Apple users, Motion, while it doesn't work like After Effects, is hugely integrated with Final Cut. On the Adobe side, After Effects is hugely integrated with Premiere, and people are using that. To me, I see this as Unreal Engine is its own environment, and so they're producing something for their users inside that environment that works perfectly in there. And I think the optimizations they can get to for that in the slice that they're interested in presenting to their audience is probably going to be better integrated.
But it's not their audience that their Unreal is selling to. It's the broadcast audience. So they're really aiming at broadcast tool. This is a broadcast tool. This is not a game tool. This is taking the Unreal Engine and moving it into a new market. But the new market is not After Effects or Motion. The new market is broadcast graphics like VizRT and Chiron and all the real-time graphics systems that are out there.
Next question.
Next question is from Philip Aller in Katona, New York. Is an Apple TV a reliable NDI receiver, or should I consider devices dedicated to this task?
You should
Alex?
consider. I'm sorry. I thought it was a host. You should consider devices that are dedicated to this. I mean, the Apple TV is a great way for you to preview things, so you can send. There are apps that will send those out. The Sienna app and others will let you send NDI to the Apple TV, and it's a great way to preview it, send it to clients, put it on confidence monitors. All those things are what an Apple TV will do great, but you're much better off using something like a Magewell or AJA or many of the other solutions that will capture a NDI signal and export them or put them out as HDMI or SDI.
And David Brady in the chat mentions the Magewell Pro Convert decoder as a great option there. Next question.
Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri asks, I was recently asked by another production company to provide 25-plus gooseneck mics for a conference room event. They mentioned a central box that would control the system. Is this a particular Shure product? Any experience with it?
Alex?
There are some central boxes. I don't know. I mean, when they say central boxes, I would call that a mixer. so that would go. What they're calling a central box might be a mixer there. I'm not sure if there's a specific controller for these. There are some larger systems that are not just goosenecks. If they're just goosenecks, those are XLR out. There's a mute button on them. They don't have a lot of remote control to them. And they're going back to a central box, which is a X32 or QL1 or whatever you're using for that mix. There are larger systems that are used in things like the EU or the UN, and those are much larger central systems. They have gooseneck mics on them, but they're a much more integrated system that includes translation and lots of other things and complete remote control of the unit.
Courtney?
Yeah, Shure does have a conferencing system. It's called a Microflex. I don't know about getting as many as you need. It does support up to 40. They come in 4 and 8 channel systems, but it says it can be combined. The 8 channel systems can be combined to support up to 40 compatible channels, or 80 in Europe. And they're wireless, basically wireless desktop units that have a little gooseneck mic on them and interface with this interface box. But then you need some kind of auto mixers. But they probably have a solution for mixing together, 3 of the 8 mic systems or 4 of the 8 mic systems to achieve what you need to do.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the Microflex, I used to have a couple of those systems, and you can definitely combine them. You basically have a receiver for about every 8 that are there that we've had there. What's cool about them is that there is you basically put the mics into a system, you hit go, and it will renumber them all so it understands where they are. You don't have to figure out which one is which. You just stick them into the charger and reset them. They are Dante based, so so your little box is the wireless receiver that immediately is available in Dante. You have a bunch of controls that are built into it through a software interface or web interface to make those controls. So you have a lot there, and then it just delivers them over Dante to whatever you're mixing to. 40 is a pretty aggressive. You'll have to move to high density mode over about 32 to 38 of them. You would need to, so 25 would be fine. It's it's sitting on the decked platform. So you can't use it at Plantronics. So just know that's the one place we asked them when Shure was in showing us to. I was like, is there any place this doesn't work? And they're like, Plantronics. It doesn't work in Plantronics.
And then, this is such a popular question in the chat. James Haldane said, get a 32-channel board with Dugan, use SM58 table mics for MX412s, but then you want, to get a Dugan auto mixer that's above 16 channels, you're going to spend quite a bit of money, says John Wallace. But Mickey also wanted to point out that the Microflex is simply the wireless system. It doesn't actually offer any processing. So just a couple reminders coming up tomorrow. Of course, we've got our weekend Q&A. Sunday is introspection. And then after the show tomorrow, so that would be 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, we've got our volunteer meeting. So we had our new volunteer meeting last week. And so if you were at that meeting, you're welcome to come to this meeting. And this is where it's kind of like a Sunday-style show where we talk about our, just things about volunteering at office hours. And there's tons of opportunities there. Obviously, we have people on the back end who are helping us get into the show. We have folks who are cutting the show, helping our audio sound good, helping our microphone or helping our video look good. And then also, there's a lot going on at office hours in terms of volunteer opportunities, even outside of the show. I know that we've got a ton going on for NAB that's happening next month. I know we're all getting geared up for the eclipse. So there's, if you haven't poked around the Discord, it's a good opportunity now because there's so much going on and so much information and there's so much activity that you can really see a community that's alive and vibrant and it's such an absolute pleasure to be in a community of people who are passionate about what they do, and what a rare opportunity to get to make a show that is made for us, by us, and just 7 days a week. We've got 4 years coming up on Monday, so we're looking forward to that too. Let's go to the next hour. And welcome back. We got a whole nother hour of Q&A coming right up, so why don't we get into the next question?
Yeah, and we got another QR code question here from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to attach my SmallRig with iPhone 14 Pro to a mic arm. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the SmallRig makes a little universal metal thing you can use, but then Alex and Joe Phillips are making incredible rigs. I've seen both these rigs. Joe has spent a tremendous amount of time in after hours explaining and diagramming and showing. And it's, I would really love to see a comparison and a dialogue between Alex and Joe about the rigs they're doing, because they're very similar. Joe's is more geared to like convention, where you have a speaker and the people asking questions can talk to the booth. So it's great to see this going on.
Bill?
So in practical terms, the first thing you need to do is get that microphone arm, which is a 5/8 27 thread traditionally, and you get it down to either a 3/8 16 or a 1/4 20. In everything that I'm doing, I'm using 1/4 20. And as a matter of fact, here's a way to do that. Once you put that on top of the mic, you can use a variety of different things. I'm kind of really enamored these days of the SmallRig hawk locks. Most of my attachment stuff was for the old, bigger style rigs, and now that I'm down to phones, usually in a SmallRig cage or something like that, this little hawk lock is really cool. It's a very, very, very small, very positively locking connection that is solid as a rock once it's on there, and so you can use that under something like a little tilt head to go through there. Let me get to the next page of this, and this is the SmallRig thing. They're about $20 a piece, and I find the combination of that adapter plus something like this gives you a really flexible mobile rig that's designed for these lightweight phone systems. My 2 cents.
Alex?
Yeah, but in short, as Bill showed at the very beginning there, the mic, you have a mic thread to a 1/4 20, and that's going to drop you straight into the rig. So that should be all you need to do that. And I've actually done it with this rig here. To use it, you can use these mic arms as little little jibs, little mini jibs in your office that you can attach your cell phone camera or a webcam.
And I'll give a shout out to Bill in terms of mic arms. He had mentioned the other day on the show the newer released a low profile mic arm to compete with the Elgato, but at the end of it actually has a pneumatic arm, kind of like those Huano monitor mounts. So it's not quite the OC White, but if you're looking for an over-the-desk shot, or you're focusing on things, or if you're doing something like, I know we've seen Sidney Draza do wood turning where the camera angles are really fantastic, to have that flexibility, you don't want to be pulling out an Allen wrench every single time you want to change your camera shot. Next question.
Next one is from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. Adobe Substance 3D has an AI text to 3D model textures beta available. How does this help in the 3D texture processes for artists?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I haven't used it because it's in beta, but I would think it would apply by giving it a text like a leather surface or a rough pebble surface. To apply textures to an area or a surface, it might be able to generate stuff which would normally try and use a tiled texture, which, you have a lot of bitmap textures that are out there that you can apply these days, and it tiles them together. But a lot of times you can kind of see where the tiles fit together, and an AI would be able to construct AI is very good at creating non-repeating textures of random, that are random. And you can't see the seams on it. So if you're applying textures to a large surface area, I can see it would come in an advantage just by trying to describe the texture, the surface reflectivity, etc., and let the AI generate it for you.
Alex?
Yeah, this is a quick. I think here's like a view of it here. This is someone typing in what they want. It starts. I want some wood, and I'm able to look at a bunch of different wood options here. And then have it simply add to the layers that are necessary. This would make it a lot easier. If you're asking for something, being able to be creative and say, I want something to be metal, but I want it to be rusty, and I want it to be a little bit edgy around certain areas. There's so many places this could go. And I think that, again, what we're seeing is that AI. There's a lot of us that built up a lot of these skills, like to do that. I shot texture maps. I actually funded my first company by shooting texture maps to create textures for all of this stuff. There was a lot of skill involved in this. What's happening is that we're now allowing people to be more creative, where people can think about what they want, and they're not really having to think about how to get there. They're thinking about what they actually want, and I think it's going to greatly speed up. I think we're going to see a lot of high quality solutions. Again, at the film level, probably not as much of an effect because you don't have positive control over every aspect. But as we look at education, corporate, TV, so on and so forth, I think you'll end up with seeing a lot of great solutions.
Next question.
Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland asks, with all the AI transcription tools now common in edit packages, are there any free/affordable services out there for audio only?
Alex?
The Whisper is what you're looking for. There's Mac Whisper, but Whisper in general, Whisper AI is what you're looking for there for doing transcription, and it will do it on your own computer. Again, Mac Whisper is a great solution that will do it on your Mac. I don't know about the other solutions, but Whisper, it sits on top of Whisper AI. You can throw your stuff in, and 15 minutes later, it's not going to be the same as throwing it to the cloud because your computer isn't as fast as a giant, GPU heavy system in the cloud. But within 15 or 20 minutes, it can take a couple hours and turn it into text. So it's that's probably the best solution right now.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, I've been experimenting with Claude 3 Opus for developing a script idea of mine, and it is uncannily coherent and creative. Could there be a market for a tool similar to Final Draft that would integrate Claude or another large language model?
Courtney?
This is available now. You can just use ChatGPT. Just ask it to write a screenplay in screenplay format, and it'll deliver dialogue. It'll put the character names in there. It just like Final Draft. It'll format it correctly for a screenplay, and it'll make up the words. So give ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 a shot at that. Just tell it you want it to write a screenplay with these characters in it, this situation, and let it go to town.
Alex?
What I find mostly is that it is all these LLMs are perfect averages of human beings. So if you want something that's average, it'll do a great job. If you want something that's great, they're not really built for that right now. You can, as far as thinking about things or thinking, what I think is interesting is I've asked it for dialogue. So I want dialogue like this. And it was funny. I asked it for something random that was kind of a military dialogue, and it gave me something that was horrendous. And all I said was, try again. and it just nailed it. I was like, oh, you really want the serious one? And it just, it just gave me the serious one that looked much more accurate. So, so you can kind of go back and forth. That was with ChatGPT, but the point is that to explore ideas, I think it's a pretty good idea. I think that you're not going to build the next Tenet or the next Oppenheimer with AI yet. But I do think it's when I read scripts that I've tested with scripts, I write me a script and I give it some things that have to happen in that. And what's amazing, 15 seconds later, I have a script that does all those things. I think they're solid for a lot of e-learning that I've seen, and they're solid for a lot of Saturday morning cartoons and Saturday afternoon, shows. But once you get into, does it compete with prime time? Probably not.
Next question.
Gary Lund in McKinney, Texas asks, what happened to the April 8th eclipse?
Paul?
Well, Gary, you're in the hill country of Texas, and I think it's going to be like Woodstock, getting to the hill country on Highway 290 going through Oak Hill. It's going to be tough. And there's two places I could watch the eclipse, because I've got a place in Hot Springs, I've got a place in Austin. Hot Springs is underbooked. They've got Fred Armisen at a city park in the middle of Hot Springs. I think that would be a great place to watch the eclipse. We could get a party boat and go out on Lake Ouachita, darkest place in America. So it would be perfect conditions for an eclipse. The hill country is going to be crazy. I think there's going to be people getting out of their cars and hitchhiking and walking and trying to get to this eclipse. I know Chris Fenwick had something lined up. I don't know what happened with that. I tried to line something up, but my friend got kind of skittish about using his land. So,
Chris, what you got lined up?
Yeah. So there's a company called HipCamp. I don't know if you've heard of this. HipCamp. It's kind of like Airbnb for dirt. Like literally, people are, they take a corner of their lot or whatever, and they allow you to rent it. I found a location on HipCamp. It's horrible for what Office Hours wants to do. There are zero services, zero anything, but this guy's totally good with me setting up and camping. I'm just going by myself. I'm gonna sit in the dark in a shadow, and I'm not gonna tell you where it is, but it's on HipCamp, and I got the last site he had available.
Chris, you could always stay at my place.
Private ranch, 3,300 acres, 20 campsites. It's very private.
I just made a visit to a small town where we've got a warehouse that's in the path of totality, and everybody is decked out. They're anticipating this town of about 2,500 people is going to balloon to about 25,000 people. Everybody's at the grocery store buying water. There's signs. People are selling merch. We have a factory up in Maine that north of them is where the eclipse is going to go through, and there's people that are selling eclipse merch, like with alien abductions on the front and coronas, and it is going to be such an event. I'm so pumped.
I don't know. I think there's been so much hype that a lot of people are shying away, and it'll be very interesting in hindsight to see what actually happens. Everybody is claiming 100,000 people are coming to our little town. Everybody's saying that. There's not that many people that are interested in eclipses. It'll be interesting. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to be, but I'll be there.
I'm just so nervous that the cell coverage is not going to work well, and if I'm going to go there and work for 3 days, right?
I got a
Starlink.
hill country. That's what people are saying. Like they're really worried that cellular service is going to go down. Commerce will go down because a lot of people use all those, cell phone, like swipe on the chip thing, whatever. And people are very nervous about it. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
I think you have to be agile. You have to decide if the weather's cloudy in Texas, zip up to Arkansas and vice versa. It's a last minute decision.
Yeah, if you can make it up there in 4 minutes, that's the trick. Yeah, my sister lives in Temple, Texas, which is in the area of totality for at least 4 minutes, I think. And she said, I talked to her last week, and I said, what are you doing about the eclipse? Well, we ordered the glasses, she says. We're going to go outside. And they live near a big green area that would be cool. But she said, All the hotels are completely booked. All the flights are completely booked. You cannot get in and out. They're telling everybody on the radio to stay at home. Do not try and travel on that day because you will not be able to get anywhere. They're predicting gridlock everywhere. So I decided not to visit her.
Arkansas is underbooked. Texas is overbooked.
Well, we've got a lot of fun at office hours around the eclipse, so don't forget to tune in. On April 8th, we'll have people all over. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Is there a way to attach the MixPre 3 to SmallRig containing my iPhone 14 for running gun recording type things?
Alex, do you think there's a way to do that?
There is. Here's the rig at where it stands right now. So this is the iPhone rig that I've been kind of putting together for NAB. So you'll see it here. So what I've got here are actually two electrosonic receivers. Then you have the iPhone and of course the MixPre here, and this MixPre is attached to the bottom. So the funny thing about this, if you look at the bottom of the MixPre, and I don't have a good way to show a close up here, but there's a screw in here, and you put a little Allen wrench in, and when you push on it, the matching Allen wrench, it'll push out a 1/4-20 on the other side of this MixPre out of the top, and you can just then screw it right into the bottom of your. So that's what I'm doing here. It also makes a great something to sit it on. It was all rocking back and forth until I added the MixPre. It's a great foot, in addition to being a great audio input. But we have almost all the pieces for this. I'm going to have a couple cables made for this to keep it tight by the audio department down in LA. But I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's funny. Almost 15 years after I made an original video of something that didn't work at all, I might actually have something that did exactly what I said it would do 15 years ago. So we're pretty close. Again, we should have it working by NAB, hopefully by the end of the weekend. So you'll probably see me do some tests.
Does it fit through doorways with those antennas sticking all the way out?
It does. It's you have to kind of turn it sideways a little bit to roll it in to have that. They're flexible. You can just go right through them. I will say that the trim is a lot heavy. You get a much bigger feel on a camera because this thing is a solid like 10 or 15 pounds now. It's no longer like a little iPhone. I'm not sure if my daughter will let me shoot her concerts with it, though. I'm always like, she says, you have to just use the iPhone. And my argument is, I'm just bringing an iPhone. That's all I'm doing. I'm just bringing the iPhone.
I know Blackmagic Camera app will not use the same stabilization to the same degree of stabilization as the built-in camera app. But I'm just thinking about running around with that rig with the built-in iPhone camera app would be butter smooth footage.
It'll be interesting to see. I'm going to, obviously, once we get it up, I'm trying to get it in pieces again. Some of the cables I'm going to order next week, so I probably won't have them until the following weekend. But I'm going to have, I should have it running, because what I'm trying to do right now is get it running by the end of the weekend so that I can buy the pieces that are still missing for it. And some of them I have found some odd issues, like trying to put that much stuff onto the iPhone. I'm pretty sure that what I just showed is the most complicated rig I've seen so far, or definitely the most expensive. Someone asked how much. I had to do the math. Someone said, how much that rig cost? And I was like, all the pieces are probably $8,000. so it's a pretty heavy iPhone rig. So, but we're getting there.
Well, Chester, you said, is there a way? You didn't say, is there a cheap way?
Again, if you're talking about a MixPre to the case, it's already built into the MixPre. All you got to do is take your little Allen wrench, push it through, and it'll connect right to the bottom. It's not a problem at all.
Alex, how are you keeping it charged? Are you using inductive charging, or what, are you using the charging port for something else other than charging?
So there's a hub that I'm waiting for another piece right now, but that'll come today because I use the pieces up here, but there's going to be a hub right here. So that hub will take the power from this battery. So this is one of the SmallRig batteries, and that'll go into the hub, and then we're hoping to power everything from there. So we'll see if it works. I've got a bunch of options with the SmallRig, so I can either power it through that hub, or I could power it directly, from the SmallRig. So there's a couple different ways of solving the problem.
Is the hub DTAP?
No, the hub is it's a USB-C hub. So it's which turns out there's only one. There's only one that works. So it all comes down because you have to clamp it. And so almost all the hubs have in and outputs on both sides of them. so that you can't clamp the hub around, in. So it has to be a very specific size. And I will say that I've watched so many videos of how people are building their rigs. So because I was trying to find this one piece. So this has a USB-C that can go into the phone, and it has one USB-C for power and 3 other USB-C service ports. So but this is the only one, and we'll see if it works. But it seems like other people that have built them. Sometimes I look at, now that I've built the rig, sometimes I look at other people's videos on YouTube and go, I don't think they actually recorded anything with that. Like which is what I did 15 years ago when I did it. Mine didn't work at all. I didn't even try to make it work. I think in the video I admitted that it didn't work. It was just a vision. So this one is one that actually has to operate. And the inspiration for this, by the way, if Nick Bat's watching, Nick, thank you. Like I was like fiddling around with a smaller kit, and Nick sent me what he was using, what he was taking to NAMM, and I was like, okay, I gotta up my game. Like Nick took it to a whole different level, and sent me, and showed it to me, and so I was like, I gotta play harder. So anyway, this is me playing harder. We're almost there. Again, by the time we get to NAB, I think that we'll break this all down in a video for office hours, and so.
It's got to be VOD. Is this the ultimate iPhone rig, camera rig, and it'll
also stream. So so we can this can stream live. So and there's an app that's anyway. I'm excited.
This weird trick to stream your iPhone.
This will stream. I am trying to figure out where to put an ambisonic mic. It won't be ambisonic. It won't be the. It will be like a little one just to capture with it, because then I could still capture the mics here as well as the ambisonic, and then I could resync it all and be able to generate videos that are in 5.1.
What's the brand on the hub, Alex? The one-of-a-kind hub?
It's hold on. Belkin makes it. And so it's four little, it's a Belkin hub. And so
anyway. Out. It's gone now.
Yeah, it's gone. I definitely don't show things until I definitely don't talk about things until I've already bought them. I've learned that lesson a long time ago.
Go ahead, Alexander.
Oh, Paul stole my thunder. That was my question. What brand?
Oh yeah. Belkin makes them, and which is a good sign. And then of course you've got a hard drive up here, so I can pull the data straight from the camera to the hard drive. So we'll see how it turns out. It's pretty close. And Mickey was suggesting some power solutions for some of this stuff. So I'm going to look at that too. So we're going to keep on working on it. We're trying to make it. I'm trying to by NAB have it be the highest quality version of this that it could be. Be all you can be. So,
Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you still attach a monopod to the bottom of the mix pre so that you can rest it on that?
You sure can. Yeah, there's another quarter 20 that's in the bottom here. So that's how this mix pre is designed. It's designed to go underneath a camera. So there's actually where you actually push it through, there's another quarter 20 right there. So, and it's even got like the little camera opening there, so you can get it, you can attach it well. So yeah, so this should work. I'd be a little afraid of, it's nice and centered, so I don't think it'll tear the mix pre off, because the weight is probably starting to get to a point where I got to be a little careful about what happens to the mix pre if it's the only point of capture. I have thought about building a cage around the mix pre, but the problem is the mix pre has got the same problem, which has got I/O on every side.
Inputs and outputs.
So you really have to do it on the bottom here
of mixers. Yes.
Yeah. So that's been that's a challenge for what we're doing here. But anyway, it's a pretty slick little system, and we'll show you more as we get it closer to the surface.
Go ahead, Paul.
You and Joe Phillips both have awesome rigs. I can't make up my mind which one's more awesome, but they're both incredible.
There's a quick release plate coming to the bottom of a mix pre near you very soon. Oh, yeah. Next question.
All right, Guy Cochran from Seattle's back. We have a MacStudio M2 Ultra 24-core 64-gig 2TB SSD in MacStadium until the end of the month. Any tests that folks want to see run in after hours today? Resolve, compressor, shuttle encoder?
Alexander?
Well, Guy, if you have any 12K raw footage hanging around, I wouldn't mind seeing how it handles that.
I feel like it's like the first time I built my MacStudio, and I said, I want the Ultra or the Max or whatever the big one. Then the first thing I did is like, okay, now what? what can I run through this that's going to make it sweat? It reminds me of, what's the most unreasonable thing? Chris has an unreasonable thing for us to test.
No, not unreasonable. I just want to say that Guy has brought up this MacStadium so many times in the last couple of weeks, and I kind of start to roll my eyes, but I remember I'm seeing the analog between his enthusiasm with this and his early enthusiasm of running AWS stuff, and realizing like how far ahead of everything he was there. So I'm very interested, Guy. I will refrain from rolling my eyes, but it's cool.
Come on, Chris. This is office hours. We touch the future. Next question.
Next question's from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Have the broadcasting stats finally caught up with our office hours predictions? And then he's got a Variety link URL there.
Courtney?
Yeah, that Variety article is on about the death of peak TV, which is, the second golden age of broadcasting, where there were so many, we got into streaming, and there were so many productions of long story arc, dramatic television series, I think Sopranos and Game of Thrones, et cetera, that was designed to drive subscriptions.
Alex? Sorry. Go ahead, Courtney.
Oh, sorry, wasn't quite finished. That the then the writer's strike, followed by the actor strike, maybe followed by another strike from IETSC. We're in negotiations now. Has kind of put the brakes on production, and what it did is during that period of time last year, where there was nothing in production, it created a kind of a gap in what's available new, and a lot of viewers, I think, went back to look at the old series that they didn't, get a chance. Let's go back and look at all of Breaking Bad again, and those are still available. So people are now kind of going back to the older series that they may not have had a chance to watch through 7 seasons of Sopranos or Dexter or Game of Thrones. And so they're now going back and viewing those. So they're not really interested, or they're really tied up in doing that rather than subscribing and looking at whole new series. And I think Warner Brothers led the lead to move over, since they own Discovery, to a lot of reality show broadcasting and the stuff where they don't have to pay writers and they don't have to pay actors, and they don't have to worry about a long story arc. They just have to cut something exciting into an episode every week from documentary type footage. And so they were leaning heavily into that type of programming. So there may be a dearth of narrative drama coming up in the next year or so. So we'll have to see what happens and if it ever comes back.
Alex?
Never coming back. just letting you know, it's never going to come back. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I think Courtney very eloquently outlined a lot of those reasons. I think that, I've been talking to a lot of people about it and reading a lot about this process, because it's pretty slow. It's especially slow in California. A lot of the runaway, if you look at the percentages, I was reading an LA Times article about this yesterday. The percentages are 10 to 20% of the movies and shows are being done in California right now. Of the ones that are booked by all the incentives have really actually sunk in a little bit. And so a lot of the stuff is being done in Georgia and Louisiana and New Mexico and Canada and now states that drop those incentives like Michigan and others are trying to turn it back on again, because as soon as they dropped them, everything disappeared. But I think that the other thing is, I was talking to somebody that's a producer in LA, and they said one of the problems is, this lines up with other things that I've seen in the past. You get into something, everyone gets really excited, and you actually run out of people. Like we saw this in the dot bombs at the end of the 90s. One of the real problems was nothing worked. And the reason nothing worked was because we had run out of web developers. And so you could take a 6-week course and go out and make $80,000 a year like the week after that, which was not sustainable. And so I think that one of the things that we did is we just ran out of writers. And I think that the writers is the real thing that we ran out of. And you ended up with a lot of content that was pretty, you ran out of writers, CG artists, in some cases actors, but you you just didn't have enough good ones to keep doing it. You could put something out, but you couldn't put things out at the level that they were being put out when people got excited about doing it. When people said, "Oh, this is the future," well, that's when you have the perfect staffs to do all these things. You got to a point. I mean, I was in 2020. I was meeting with a producer from Netflix, and they said we have 900 producers on staff, right, or 900 producers working, and we're 900 short. You know, like that's the scale at which Netflix was running at was eye popping, you know, and so and you just don't have, there just wasn't that many people there to do it. And so what we ended up with is a lot of watered down shows. I can tell you my family has not, we watched Hannah, which was a TV show based on the movie. That was probably the newest one. We watched Travelers, which is, I think finished in 2021 or 2018 or something like that. But before that, everything else has been Alias and Person of Interest, and we're now watching Chuck. As a family, like we're sitting around. Chuck is not a very well-written show, just in case you're wondering. As I talk about it, it's not the pinnacle of writing or design, but it's like a guilty pleasure. We all sit around and watch and joke and have fun and everything else. And so, but I look at us as the kind of the canary in the coal mine of a family sitting there watching stuff together, and we're not watching any of the new stuff. And I think part of it is the cancellations have come so quickly that none of us want to commit to anything until we see 4 or 5 seasons and we see how it closed. Like we've talked about starting Lost, but I know how Lost ended. It was horrible. Like it was just a horrible ending, and so I'm like, my wife's like, oh, we can watch it for the first 4 seasons. I'm like, but you know where it's going to go, nowhere, and Game of Thrones is the same thing. And so I think that there is I think that Hollywood. Also, the other thing we've talked about is the strikes have been, there's still an IATSE strike looming, and a lot of producers are not willing to start big productions until they know that either has to finish before the strike could happen, or they want to know that the strike is not going to happen, and they won't start productions until then. And that's one of the things that's really had a downward impact on new starts is because of that. They also definitely, they were saying this, people that I worked with were saying this all the way through the strikes, is that it's going to change the way we make shows. Like the new rules that the writers and actors have done is going to, they think that they're getting something out of this, but they're going to get something out of it per unit. There's just going to be a lot less units, because it's going to change how this works. And so they kind of won the battle, but might have lost the war, in that sense. And so it's going to be really interesting. I think that the other problem they have is the biggest competitor is not something else other than YouTube. I'm talking about like, oh, we watch this show or that show. Watching shows on streaming or for my family make up probably 20% of our viewing, maybe 10%. The 80 to 90% is all, TikTok is only in the morning. I send Chris TikToks in the morning while I'm biking. So I only watch TikTok in the morning while I'm biking, because I think TikTok's a huge waste of time, and I hate biking. And so if I mix the two of them together, then I can bike. So anyway, but most of us are watching YouTube most of the time. And I think that's YouTube is the thing that no one keeps on referring back to, is this giant user-generated platform that is producing. I mean, I look at some of the content. So, I mean, obviously a lot of the content's silly, and I actually watch a lot of that silly content. If you haven't watched Daily Dose, we check to see if there's a Daily Dose every day. There's not. It says Daily Dose. It's not every day. It's every couple of days. But it is. It's just, and it's completely useless content for 3.5 minutes. But we love it. But on the other side of that is there's this thing called Wacky Science that just came out a couple months ago, and I talked about it in the past. There's a thing on chemistry there. It's the chemistry in 19 minutes. It's the most elegant description of how molecules work ever made that I've seen. Like it is, and that was done by some 18-year-old. And it's funny. And it's got fun, it's like it's got some jokes in it. It keeps it light, and it's what the future of school should be, so I think that that's the real competition is that there's a lot of great stuff coming out that isn't being generated by Hollywood, and Hollywood can't iterate fast enough to keep up.
And I have the sinking feeling that when Hollywood feels that they're competing against their own legacy content, this prestige TV is going to end up behind a steeper paywall, or not going to be available as included with the streaming package, because if you're not producing the same level of content, they're going to do exactly what we're doing and watch the older stuff. Sorry, Paul, you had something?
Oh, yeah, just pretty much everything Alex and Alexander said. It's the Netflix, it's all that. And Chuck, I'll have to watch Chuck. You know, the guy who plays Chuck, Zachary Levy, lives right down the road from me here. And I'll have to check that out. What's the fascination with Chuck? It's an old series.
It's just funny. Like, it's light. It's funny. It's at the end of the day. My family generally has one show that we watch, and we just watch every episode one after the other every night. It's our way of hanging out. Like, it's just we watch, and so like we watched the seasons of, again, Person of Interest. It was a long time. That was like 6 months or 8 months of watching things, which was really good. We watched Alias, both. We watched Alias. We watched Heroes. We watched, but they span, like our viewing habit will span, but we only watch that one thing. I mean, everybody watches whatever they want on their own. We have a show, and no one's allowed to get ahead. No one's allowed to watch it. As soon as someone gets ahead, then we stop watching the show. It's like you've ruined it for everyone. And so there's a lot of peer pressure to wait until, and then there's a lot of peer pressure to get started at a certain time so that we can be done and go to bed and everything else. But it's the last thing we do every day is watch a show that we've all agreed that we're willing to sit down and watch. And that's hard because we all have very different, the boys tend to lean a little bit more towards conflict, armed conflict usually. And the girls want something a little more soft, and we have to find a happy in between.
Chris?
The Mentalist. Love that show. We just started rewatching it.
We've tried. I love The Mentalist, and we've tried, and it didn't land with the kids. Mentalist, Monk, those have been two that I've tried to sell to them, and neither of them, because we watch a couple of them, and if someone said, if any one person in our family says no, we have to go find something else.
So about 6 years ago at NAB, I was in a discussion with somebody very much kind of like that TikTok that you sent me this morning, Alex. Sorry, insider joke. With somebody about edit platforms. It was Michael. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Camus?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Anyway, and I told him, I said, why are you still worried about Hollywood? I mean, this is 6-7 years ago, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Dude, it's dead. It's dead. You just don't know it. You are sitting in the middle of a dead, rotting corpse." And I'll tell you, people, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit to Roscoe's question here. There's plenty of work. Matt's Off-Road Recovery has a staff of 3 editors. Jimmy, Mr. Beast, is building the largest soundstage in all of the Americas. Where is he? North Carolina? South Carolina?
He's got over 100 employees.
Oh, and he's hiring another 100 because of this new deal he's got with Amazon Prime. Yeah. He's going to double. There's plenty of work. It's just on YouTube. Stop worrying about Hollywood. Hollywood is dead. You just don't realize it yet.
I was talking to a YouTuber that has 1 million followers. I mean, it's a lot of followers, but not like incredible numbers. They have 5 editors. That are working, like on their stuff. It's kind of like, they're cooking along, and so there's definitely lots of work. It's just not the same as it used to be.
And now live from Hollywood, Courtney Gooden.
I was just going to say, Chuck, which I occasionally worked on, reluctant spy that kind of gets sucked into his neighbor's CIA
graphics
underground.
You didn't work on the graphics.
Oh,
did
thanks.
You didn't work on the graphics, did you? The sound is great.
No, just playback.
Yeah, the playback and the sound looks amazing. But the interfaces, though.
If you want it's fairly pedestrian. That came out of the Warner Brothers graphics.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's just like,
if you want I was just going to say, if you want to see a funny reluctant spy movie, go see Spy with Melissa McCarthy. It is really hilarious.
If you want to see something funny, watch anything with Melissa McCarthy.
Yes, that's true.
So funny.
All right.
Next question.
Next question comes from Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri. I haven't purchased a projector in a while. I'm noticing that most lumen ratings are unclassified as opposed to ANSI or otherwise. What gives? Can I trust unspecified lumen ratings?
Not really. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep on doing that. Not really. You can't trust them without those. I'll tell you that you can look at a lot of things. I have a BenQ that kind of works, that I've had for a decade. But outside of that, everything we've bought since then have been Epsons. In the consumer area. and I will say that those numbers I trust. I compare Epsons to other Epsons, but I don't really buy a lot of other things underneath 10 grand that isn't an Epson. Like it's, there's a couple Sonys that I've looked at. Once you go over $10,000, there's Sony, Panasonic, Barco, Christie. Like those are the ones that we pay the most attention to. But under about, I guess I would say under about $7,000, almost everything we bought in the last decade have been some version of an Epson. So I'm really comparing the Epsons with other Epsons.
Courtney?
No, you can't trust them. And in fact, if you look at some of these, they're kind of funny in what they advertise. This says this Zimi Mogo Pro 1080p, $533 they want for this projector. It has 300 ANSI lumens. And it says, good for outdoor movies. Yeah, if you live in the black hole of Calcutta, you're not going to see anything with 300 ANSI lumens. That is next to nothing. And this one down below that says it's ViewSonic, which is a known product, it has 3,500 ANSI lumens. Now I would tend to believe that more. You don't want to get a projector that has less than 3,000 lumens these days. A lot of them have gone to these LED light sources, and you'll see some that have this 300 lumens, so be careful about that. And also it depends on your screen size. It says it'll deliver that lumens at 300 inches screen size. So, it'll be really bright as long as, the projector is 3 feet from the screen. But you get it further away, the lumens may not be enough to give you enough contrast in a normally lighted room to have a good viewing experience. Go with the ViewSonics, the EKs, the Epsons. They can deliver pretty good stuff. And the laser light sources is really a laser pointing at it's a UV laser that's pointing at an LED phosphor type that generates the image. They last a lot longer, but they're not as bright as they sound.
Alexander?
Yeah, when I'm looking for a budget projector, for me, there's two things that I look at that are table stakes: 1080p, 4,000 lumens. Anything less than 4,000 lumens, it's not worth it.
And a pro tip for the Epsons, the high end of the home cinema line and the very low end of the pro cinema line are virtually the same projector, just in black or white, so for your room. Next question.
All right, our next question is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Any thoughts on why film folks are still out of work? And there's a link posted to Hollywood Reporter.
Go ahead, Alex.
This is the article here, and it's talking about the industry's not back. And we touched on this a little bit before. There's a growing belief among many business owners, and it's starting to infect Hollywood as well, that California is not a good place to do business. And so they are, so New York is still busy. So they're still busy doing stuff. Now, New York has some other advantages in that the city is often used as a highlight of a location. It's denser. There's things that are hard to reproduce that aren't in New York. So it's been pretty busy. A lot of the incentives have kind of sunk in. People have built infrastructure. It takes a lot of years. The hard part is people do these incentives and they don't realize that it takes 15 or 20 years for the studios to get built. And so that's, and you have to make sure people feel like and when you kill your incentives, it means that no one's going to trust you for 15 years. so they're all going to, so they're not, they might do a show in your state, but they're not going to build a studio in your state, and so that's so Georgia and New Mexico and Louisiana and a couple others in Canada have all been very successful at building something that's relatively stable. That people can build out of, and they have a lot of other beyond the incentives. They're just easier from a business perspective to work in, and so as a result, we've seen a big drop in production inside of California. But there's a drop in overall production, but there's also a pretty big drop and there's plenty of work out there, as Chris said before. But in the film business, we're seeing a massive drop in the number of films that are being produced in California. I think my brother just went to Louisiana, so I think he's gone for a couple months. I don't know the last time he shot. I mean, he has shot some stuff in California, but it's pretty rare. So I think that's the real challenge that's happened for the state on many, many, many levels, and we'll see if they can change their trajectory. But right now, it could be pretty challenging.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think, LA and New York have the television business, because it's continuous and ongoing. At least it used to be. But nowadays there's a slowdown because, like we said earlier, there's a negotiations now with the ITSE and the Teamsters about our next contract expires next month. In July, and they're negotiating now. And if they can't come to an agreement, there's a rumor that there might be a strike. We have not received a strike authorization vote yet, so it's still a ways off. We still have a few months to negotiate. But everyone, of course, is worried about AI, so there's all that fear. And we're waiting. Television will still continue, I think, in the areas where they have good weather, like Southern California. When they move, a lot of feature films have moved off to Georgia because of the incentives, and Louisiana because of the incentives. But they're finding with the climate change lately, there's been a whole lot of bad weather that's been moving through those states over there, Georgia and Louisiana and those coastal areas. So there's been a lot of flooding, a lot of cold weather, and it makes it a lot tougher to produce anything we're going to be shooting outdoors. Maybe they're just going to build big virtual sets on all those empty sound stages that they built out there in Atlanta. So that may be what we're competing against in the future. But Southern California still has the great weather for shooting real exterior.
And Mickey actually mentioned in the chat on the previous couple questions ago a good point. This is an amazing time for world cinema. There's a lot of great content being produced outside the United States that's probably going to get an opportunity to come in if we do find ourselves in a dearth of content. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, there's this studio called 552 Studios that's in Southern California. They decided they're going to move into our county, Bastrop County, Texas. And they were having all kinds of problems getting this project going. So the Texas legislature passed a law saying that they could de-annex themselves from the city. So they're going to do this, and they're going to accelerate the development of this studio. It's a mega studio. It's right in the bend of the Colorado River in Bastrop County. It's going to be a mega huge studio. They've cut through all the red tape. So California can learn something from Texas. Maybe they can pass some laws that'll speed up the studio. Alex laughing, but
well, go ahead, Alex.
California mostly interacts with its citizens as you're lucky to be here. So I think that's the problem that it has. Every time you want something different, like, hey, it'd be great if I had power all the time, or you're lucky to be here. So I think that's really the challenge here. The problem with the strikes is not that the strike has been authorized or the strike might be coming. It's the threat of the strike is holding back an enormous amount of work. Is that no one wants to get half. What happened last year was that people got halfway into a production and then couldn't finish it, which is incredibly expensive and disruptive. And so as a result, a lot of producers are just going to wait until this gets sorted out. And a lot of them have said, they're part of the pause last year for the strikes that happened there is it gave the producers a lot of time to really think about their life choices, like all the things that we've been doing. And there was a certain level of like this giant railroad of stuff, and you couldn't feel like you could stop. And then when you stopped, they were actually making more money because they were producing less things and people didn't cancel their subscription. And that was a huge eye opener. Oh, people aren't canceling their subscriptions, and we're not making as much as much content. Maybe we should just make less content. And so getting off of the train made it much easier for them to realize they may not need to get back on the train as fast as they thought they did. And that has really had a massive impact on production.
Courtney?
And people kind of forget because prior to the strikes, there was 2 years of COVID, which really almost completely terminated production, at least for several months. And then production only started up with these draconian safety measures that made it 2 to 3 times as expensive to shoot a film under those procedures, safety procedures. So it made it a whole lot harder to shoot, even though after the pandemic was, the restrictions had been removed somewhat. Film production still had a lot of safety precautions in place that lasted many months, almost a year after everybody else got back to work. So that slowed down production tremendously. And then that was followed by the double whammy of the writers and actors strike.
Next question.
Jack Cannon from Phoenix, Arizona asks, I'm seeing folks recommend the Samsung T7 drives out there, but I remember Office Hours recommending against it due to issues. Is this still an issue?
Alexander?
I don't know if it's still an issue, but at this point, even if they have fixed it, whether it's firmware updates or completely replacing the internal storage, I think Samsung's, not their brand necessarily, but I think this particular product line is so damaged from a PR perspective that I would not want to touch it at all. I think at this point, the only way around this is releasing something like call it a T8 or whatever they want to call it, but I won't buy anything that's labeled T7.
Alex?
I'm with Alexander. so I just can't, we had a lot of record problems specifically, and it really became we just basically it's stalling. And so while people are recommending it, a lot of us have had the actual issues. It's not like we read about them. And so a lot of us will use the drives, but we will not connect them to our cameras.
Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada asks, if I'm trying to capture family memories for years down the road, what sorts of compositions make for the best spatial videos as captured by an iPhone today?
Alex?
Yeah, I've done a little of this already, and the thing you have to think about when you think about spatial recording is to pull back just a little bit. There's a couple things. It's kind of a hard thing to say because where the best dimensionality is between about 5 and 10 feet. So that's the distance where you're going to get it. If it's a little closer, it gets pretty close. I have shot some stuff right in front of me, and it works really well. The main thing is if you cut people really close to the edge, you just really want to think about almost TV like action safe or even title safe. Give it a big area, because when you hit spatial on your headset, it blurs out like about 20% of the frame. And so you end up with this kind of soft area where everyone's in the softness. So if you give it that 20% buffer around it, you're going to end up with a cleaner frame of what you're actually looking at. But the stuff that's close up is very natural. I'm shooting some tests right now where it's POV. You're looking right at an object, and I can show you something in 3D, and it actually is pretty impressive. And so you can also remember that if you shoot with the headset itself, you are getting better stereo because the interaxial distance between the cameras is about 4 times wider. So just something to think about there.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm testing a Belkin USB-C hub on my iPhone 15 PM. It provides HDMI out and Ethernet along with USB-A, all of which seems to work fine. Have you tested Ethernet out of a 15 PM?
Go ahead, Alex.
I haven't tested it with this hub, but I have tested it, and it works perfectly. I mean, all the iPhones for the last, 9 or 10 versions have worked. So you can sit there and you plug in some adapter that'll go to Ethernet, and you'll get an Ethernet connection. It even shows a little Ethernet icon. So it's not like a hack. It really just works.
It is a little bit of a flex when you open up your iPhone and you go into the settings, and all of a sudden there's an Ethernet bar there. You're like, oh, I've made it. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's from John Fisher in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Several single-screen independent movie theaters have opened in Oklahoma City, repurposing historic buildings. Do you think these types of theaters will fare better than the big chains over the next few years?
Courtney?
Well, if they can target special events, like if they've got an old movie theater that has existed for 30 or 40 years, and they went in, refurbed it, and brought it back to its original 1920s type of architecture, maybe they can attract some special venue stuff. But I see a lot of the multiplexes, like all the multiplexes that went out of business, like ArcLight, they were bought up by other companies, are now in the process of running reissues of Spider-Man 3 or Shrek 2 because it's the 20th anniversary. So they're struggling to find product to put into these multi-screen venues, because when a new film will come out like Ghostbusters, they'll put it on 9 of the screens in the multiplex to accommodate the demand for it in the first opening weeks. and then they'll drop it back. But then they've got all these empty screens they have to fill, and so they're now filling them with reissues. In fact, I just heard they're reissuing Star Wars for the 25th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. So, Alex, you're
it's actually for episode 1, and
episode 1, right?
But they're releasing on the wrong date. But anyway,
they are coming back
May
to
the
theaters,
4th, which makes sense. But it would actually happen
May the
later
4th,
in May.
yes.
Not that I noticed.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hey, the Alamo Drafthouse has done this in Austin. They've taken several like old movie theaters and shopping centers and, turned them into boutique type theaters where they have trays and servers and you can order a pizza while you watch the movie. Although I did notice that downtown, the Alamo there got converted into the Mothership, which is Joe Rogan's new comedy club. But they've been doing pretty well. Don't they have Alamos in other places too? Didn't that franchise extend out to other cities?
Alex?
It's been a challenge. You really have to think about what you're doing that's different. And is it really competitive with what people have? The big challenge that single theaters have is that they have to have a really, really good system because they're competing with people that at home, a TCL 85-inch that supports Dolby Vision. It's probably not the nicest monitor in the world, TV in the world, is like $850. And so at that point, now that 85 inches 4K has dropped below $1,000 and you can get a really good one for $2,000 and $2,500, a lot of people at home that have a better system than they're going to have a better experience. If you look at their field of view and their distance to screen, they're going to actually have a better viewing experience than at a theater. Now, you can say that people want to watch it together, but not many people actually want that. So it's a place that, like most people want to be left alone. They want to be quiet. I think that the experience stuff that some people are doing that I've worked on a little bit at theaters, I think has a much longer legs because that's something you actually want to do together. People want to go see Taylor Swift or Beyonce and they want to sing along and have that experience of being in it with everybody else. I don't think that most people want to, I think that Hollywood people think that, but I think people actually going to the films don't actually feel the need to have a lot of people around them making noise and talking and using their phones, et cetera, et cetera.
Courtney? Can't hear you, Courtney.
In answer to Paul's question, Alamo Drafthouse did open one theater in LA, but it's in downtown LA. And the problem with those boutique theaters, they used to be, up until a lot of them were refurbed, they had been turned into Spanish language theaters. And that particular market has been taken over by the Spanish language television available in Los Angeles on a lot of the sub-channels once we went to digital TV. So all those telenovelas and Spanish language features are now showing up on all of those television channels. There's no need, there's not as much of a market for them in the Hispanic community. And the problem with these refurbs in downtown in urban locations is parking. Parking costs you, $30 to park your car in downtown LA these nights. And it's tough with a, $15 a ticket movie, and, $25 worth of popcorn and Coke and $30 worth of parking. You just can't afford it to go see a 30-year-old movie.
Chris?
Casey Neistat just yesterday posted a video where he hooked up with a friend of his named Doug Liman. Doug directed the new Roadhouse movie and Born Identity and a bunch of other things. And they've known each other for 20 years or something, like 15, 20 years, something like that. And it's a very interesting watch because where Casey first meets up with his friend Doug, they meet in a mixing room where they mixed Roadhouse. And the story was all about how Doug was angry at Amazon because he contractually signed up to make a theatrical released film, Roadhouse, but Amazon said, "Nah, we're just going to stream it." And he was boycotting South by Southwest. Very interesting story. And then they go down the hall to the room that they mix TV shows in. And it's part of the equation of, what's a theatrical release and what's a streaming release. But if you're at all a Casey Neistat fan, it's an interesting watch about the whole thing.
Alex?
my wife's opinion notwithstanding, I love Roadhouse, the original Roadhouse. It's one of my guilty pleasures. It's a great movie. I watched the trailer. I will enjoy watching it on Amazon Prime. I would never see that in the theater. I feel like they lost what made it special. I think it'll be a fun little ride, but it would bomb in the theater because what you're looking when you do a remake, you want the people who originally watched it to want to go back and see it. And what they did is they changed the entire premise of it. What they missed was that it was all about being a Zen master and going down that path. It's not I'm just talking about the trailer. I'm not ruining anything. And the trailer, though, is about an MMA wrestler, and it's not. It completely changes the whole flavor. So in case I'm wrong, which I will probably end up watching with my son this weekend, but I would immediately watch it on Amazon. But I think that they were wrong in thinking that there's so many of these things. We make decisions all the time as a family, like, hey, would we ever want to see this in the film? And Dune, we're on the verge of seeing in film, but that's like the only one this year, that we're looking at. Like the rest of them, I'm like, we'll wait. And so I think that's the real problem is that a lot of people have, again, good systems at home. I'm not that interested in going to a theater unless it's going to be as grand as Dune or Oppenheimer. And I didn't even see Oppenheimer I was waiting for 1570 and I couldn't get to it.
I'm not defending the theater. Don't get me wrong.
No, I'm just saying.
I've given up on theaters and airplanes, but it's an interesting perspective from the filmmaker to kind of get behind the whole thing. And
people ask, I think your point, one of the things that's really interesting is that people complained. They said Apple failed, by putting out Argyle and putting out specifically the one that the Napoleon, and it didn't make its money back. That wasn't the point. What Apple did is prove to filmmakers that we're willing to release something, and they also happened to get more PR and actually pay less because they got some money back. If they did it as streaming, they get the same amount of money back, no matter what. So Apple, going out to theater when streamers go to the theaters, they are not going out to pay off the film. They are going out to make the filmmakers happy so they can attract those filmmakers. There's some back end that the filmmakers get and the actors get because of that. They're going out for PR. They're going out to take it. If it even pays for the marketing for the film, it's worth doing because now that was free marketing that they did for their platform. So I think that when people say that, Napoleon was a failure, now it was a horrible movie in my opinion, but the fact that they said it was a failure, they're not understanding the math that the streamers are working inside of.
Well, thanks, everybody. What a wonderful day of Q&A. We've got more coming up tomorrow for Q&A, so if your questions, if we didn't get to your questions today and you asked in Makana, they'll get pushed back to your notes. We'll filter any QR code questions into our system automatically. But a couple moments of gratitude for the end of the show here. Thank you to our panel for sticking around and answering all the questions today. It was a lot of fun. It's good to see Paul on here. It's not as common of a face, but we love new panelists. The more people get involved, the more fun we have. Also, thank you to the great producers who are asking all these questions, keeping us going for 2 solid hours of Q&A today. I was a little worried that we weren't going to have that all of a sudden. I was like, there's all these great questions. This is fantastic. And of course, thank you to our crew who did a fantastic job today, cutting the show, making us look and sound good, getting us all in here on time. We could not do it without the small village that wakes up to support us 7 days a week. We'll see you tomorrow for more Q&A, Sunday introspection, and Monday it will be 4 years since office hours began. Never missed a day. Tlaloc Traversal today, 49,000 miles. That's 78,000 kilometers, 386 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
Hey, what is the rule for getting an Oscar for a film? I think I heard someplace that
I think it has to be released in a certain number of theaters. You mean? Yeah. No, I mean, to be eligible, it has to be released in, I think it's a couple different, I think it's at least New York
2
and
theaters
LA.
in New York and 2 theaters in LA within, it has to run for 2 weeks.
And exclusively theatrically for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is it
2 weeks?
Is there a determination for how big of a theater it has to be?
No. A lot of these get released in art houses. I mean, they're like 150, small. But they have to be public. It has to be public. It can't be private.
Yeah, of course.
The kicker for small theaters, though, is the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville. They have like 3 screens. They do live stuff there. But it's where they film the scene from The Blob.